There is a player who won 2 World Cups, a player who never lost a single match when he shared the pitch with Pelé, a player who made entire stadiums chant "Olé" before anyone else on earth. FIFA named him to the greatest team of the 20th century, but when he died, the hospital recorded his profession as unemployed. His name was Garrincha, and this is the story of how football consumed a genius, and then pretended he never existed. Manuel Francisco dos Santos was born in 1933 in Pau Grande, a poor factory district outside Rio de Janeiro. The place was so small and forgotten that even its name sounded ironic. Pau Grande, big stick. There was nothing big about it. Dirt roads, factory housing, workers trapped inside a system they would never escape. And then there was Garrincha's body. His spine was deformed. One leg was shorter than the other. One knee bent inward, the other outward. Doctors looked at him and saw a cripple. The boy who would become the greatest dribbler in football history couldn't even walk in a straight line. But football has always loved impossible things, because the same legs that made Garrincha look broken made him impossible to defend. Defenders would commit to one direction. Then Garrincha's body would move somewhere human logic couldn't predict. He didn't dribble with technique alone. He dribbled with chaos. The thing that made him look damaged became his superpower. By the early 1950s, Garrincha was working in a textile factory, married with children, playing amateur football for fun. He didn't dream of becoming famous. Football wasn't ambition for him. It was joy. Then Botafogo invited him for a trial. And what happened that day became football legend. Nílton Santos, one of Brazil's greatest defenders and a World Cup winner, was told to mark the unknown player from Pau Grande. Garrincha humiliated him. Again, and again, and again. Nutmegs, feints, turns nobody understood. After training, Nílton Santos reportedly walked directly to the club directors and said, "Sign him immediately." Botafogo signed him, and suddenly Brazil had never seen anything like him. Not because he scored the most goals, not because he trained the hardest, not because he looked disciplined, but because watching Garrincha felt impossible. He played football the way children imagine football. Pure instinct, pure joy, pure improvisation, and for a while, that joy was enough. Then came the World Cup. Sweden, 1958. The tournament the world remembers as Pelé's arrival. The 17-year-old king. The future of football. The birth of a global icon. And yes, Pelé was extraordinary. But history quietly erased something important. Brazil's most terrifying weapon in that tournament wasn't Pelé. It was Garrincha. In the final against Sweden, Garrincha destroyed defenders so badly that the crowd started chanting "Olé" every time he touched the ball. That chant would spread across football forever. And it started with him. Not with Spain. Not with bullfighting. With a Brazilian man whose legs bent in opposite directions. But football history had already chosen its hero. Pelé became the face of victory. Garrincha became background noise, and that pattern never stopped. Because football doesn't just celebrate greatness. It manufactures narratives, and narratives are worth billions. Then came 1962, the tournament that should have made Garrincha immortal. Pelé got injured early in the World Cup. Most people assumed Brazil was finished. Instead, Garrincha produced one of the greatest individual performances football has ever seen. He scored. He assisted. He dominated matches almost alone. Against England, he scored twice. Against Chile, he destroyed the hosts. In the final, Brazil won the World Cup again. Garrincha finished the tournament with the golden ball and the Golden Boot. For weeks, he looked less like a footballer and more like a force of nature. This should have been the moment the world admitted the truth, that Garrincha wasn't just Pelé's teammate. He was equal to him, maybe even more magical. But instead, history reduced the entire tournament to a sentence. Brazil's system was strong enough to win without Pelé. The system, not Garrincha. The greatest individual World Cup performance ever became a tactical footnote. And while the world celebrated the spectacle, something darker was already growing behind it. Alcohol. Garrincha's father was an alcoholic, and Brazilian football culture poured gasoline onto the problem. In the 1950s and 60s, clubs openly served alcohol inside locker rooms. Players drank before matches, during halftime, after games. For most players, it was a habit. For Garrincha, it was destruction disguised as culture. By the mid-1960s, everyone knew he was spiraling. Teammates knew. Managers knew. The press knew. Nobody stopped him. Because as long as Garrincha kept entertaining crowds, football had no incentive to save him. That's the part nobody wants to admit. The machine loved watching him fall apart, as long as he kept winning first. And while his body collapsed, his personal life exploded too. Affairs, children, scandals, chaos. At least 14 children, possibly far more. Then came Elza Soares, one of Brazil's most famous singers. Their relationship became national obsession, beautiful, explosive, self-destructive. The media attacked them relentlessly. The Catholic Church condemned them. Football executives panicked over the scandal. Not over Garrincha's alcoholism, not over his mental collapse, over the image. Because protecting football's image has always mattered more than protecting footballers. Botafogo eventually sold him. And from there, everything became smaller. Smaller clubs, smaller contracts, smaller crowds. Corinthians, Colombia. Tiny clubs nobody remembers. The legs that once broke football physics now barely carried him across the pitch. The genius was fading in public. And the machine moved on to younger stars. That's what football does. It celebrates you while you generate emotion, then quietly replaces you when your body breaks. By 1980, Garrincha was almost unrecognizable. Overweight, poor, drunk, forgotten. He occasionally appeared in charity matches. Crowds still applauded him. Then they went home. And Garrincha returned to drinking alone. Football had taken everything from him: his knees, his fame, his joy, his future. And once there was nothing left to extract, it abandoned him completely. On January 19, 1983, Garrincha was admitted to a public hospital in Rio de Janeiro. His body had been destroyed by alcoholism, decades of drinking, decades of neglect, decades of institutional silence. He died the next day, 49 years old. And then came the detail that explains everything. On his death certificate, under profession, the hospital wrote, "Unemployed. Not football legend, not World Cup champion, not national hero. Unemployed." The greatest dribbler who ever lived was reduced to a bureaucratic category usually reserved for people history never notices. And somehow, football kept moving. His funeral drew thousands into the streets. But FIFA sent no major representatives. The Brazilian Federation barely acknowledged him. The same sport that used Garrincha to sell the beautiful game couldn't even honor him properly when he died. And over time, football slowly sanitized him. The real Garrincha disappeared. The broken genius, the alcoholic, the exploited superstar, the man abandoned by the industry he helped build. In his place came a safer version, a smiling icon, a nostalgic memory, a harmless legend, because football prefers dead myths over uncomfortable truths. And the uncomfortable truth is this: Garrincha was not an accident. He was the prototype. The first global football genius consumed entirely by the machine. Because modern football doesn't just create idols. It extracts value from human beings until there's nothing left. Then it moves on. Every era has its Garrincha, the player who entertains millions, while privately collapsing. The player whose body generates billions, while institutions carry zero responsibility for the human being behind it. And football still refuses to answer the obvious question. If the sport can generate unimaginable wealth from a player's talent, why does it bear no responsibility when that player breaks? Why was there no pension, no medical support, no protection, no long-term care? Why could a man who helped build modern football die alone in a public hospital labeled unemployed? Because answering that question would force football to admit something dangerous: that the beautiful game isn't just built on genius, it's built on consumption. And Garrincha may have been the first great footballer the machine devoured completely. He won 2 World Cups. He never lost with Pelé. He changed how football looked forever. And in the end, football gave him a stadium name instead of a future. If this story changed the way you see football, subscribe to the B side of football. Because every episode here uncovers another layer hidden beneath the version they sold you. And the deeper you look, the darker the game becomes.